and welcome to the Environmental Update. I'm Brian Hoppy, and I serve as the chair of the Lower Merion Environmental Advisory Council. In 2018, we're going to take a look around the township and at various schools and explore their environmental curriculum a little bit more. And today, we're here at Friends Central School, lower campus in Wynnewood, and in full disclosure, I have to admit, both of my children attend Friends Central School, and they've done so since they were in kindergarten. My daughter's now a freshman in high school at the upper campus, and my son Parker, who you may see milling around the campus here, is a fifth grader. And he's a fifth grader in my guest class, science class, Tiffany Borsch. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Tiffany, what can you tell us about Friends Central School and the environmental program that you have here?
Yeah, I think that the strength of our program, our science curriculum, and sustainability within that curriculum is that it's not necessarily broken into certain units of environmental study. Everything that we do is integrated into the work. The kids learn how to take care of the campus. They learn how to plant food and harvest and tend to the garden. They learn how to take care of the chickens. We are constantly having conversations within the different units of study about sustainability and environmentalism. So it's really kind of embedded in our ethos here as one of the tenets of Quakerism itself, stewardship.
And I've really come to appreciate the environmental ethic of the school, the way the curriculum is set up, having my children both gone through it and all still going through it, and the dedication the teachers have to the children and their well-rounded education. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
But I'm curious, what kind of activities do you do with the children to really get them in touch with the environment?
Yeah, so there's another science teacher who teaches nursery through kindergarten, and she has the kids outside as much as possible.
And what's her name?
Sarah Taylor. And the kids are out there observing nature, being in nature, getting dirty, really learning how to ask a lot of questions. When they come to me in first grade, we start to take all of that work and kind of learn how to ask the questions that a scientist would and how to observe nature as a scientist would. We start with living and non-living things. So just being able to discern how scientists look and categorize things. That allows us, we study weather and climate, so that in first grade they are doing climate change. They will learn about weather, and those conversations start super early. By second grade, we're breaking down how nature recycles itself, and we study decomposition. We grow worms, we use their castings, we learn all about the digestive system. Again, looking at a system that is already set up in nature, and how can we as humans model after what nature already does. We study cells in second grade, and that was a very deliberate placement for me. When I came here a few years ago and rewrote their curriculum, because I wanted us to be able to talk about evolution in third grade. And you can't really talk about evolution if you don't talk about cells. And I wanted the students to really talk about evolution so that they would understand that we all originated from the same cells. Not only so there's a social justice piece to it, where then they can see themselves in others, humans, but also that they can go out into nature and say, wow, like that tree over there, right? It started as cells, and billions of years ago, we all started as these same cells. And so to try to get them to understand that before they try solving the problems that we've all created, that they have this innate inherent connection to nature. And then we move from there. In fourth grade, they do a bird project, and it's really to get them to see how they can connect to another living species, but also how that species is affected by the choices that we humans have made. So this year, they each study an individual bird, but as a group, we studied the snowy owl. So we were looking at the Arctic and looking at why it's really important to study both the bottom and the top of the poles, but specifically the snowy owl's habitat. By the time we get to fifth grade, we did a huge project this year the fifth graders study food in depth. And so one of the things that I really want them to understand is that we don't just grow food outside in soil. There are other ways to grow food, and that as we move forward in time and population grows and resources are more scarce, that there's going to be a great need for their generation to understand how to feed the world in different ways. So we have aeroponic towers in our light lab space, and the fifth graders are responsible for planting and harvesting those and eating that. They get to eat all the food that they grow. And they did a big project this year looking at one specific food and going from seed to fork, or some of them were like, it's with a spoon, but that idea of how do you get one product from the ground, right, to your table. And we really looked a lot at transportation. I think that was one of the biggest takeaways was that there's so much energy used in the production of food.
So Tiffany, what other types of environmental or sustainability programs are part of the Friends Central School?
So here at the lower school, we every classroom recycles, and the fifth graders again are responsible for collecting that recycling every Friday. So that's just one thing that we do on a weekly basis. On a daily basis, every kid composts their lunches and their snacks, and we have our own compost bin in the garden. So they're understanding, they're living it. It's a living, breathing part of who we are here at the lower school.
So with the compost bin, before you continue on your question, do you teach the children about composting and how it occurs and what happens and what they need to do to maintain a healthy compost pile?
Yeah, so it's a slow compost. There's not a lot of turning that happens. But they do it in pairs. So every kid, it's part of their jobs, just like line leader or picking up the chairs or running errands for their teacher. Composting is a weekly job in the classrooms. And so they're either taking the bins from the dining hall out or their little snack containers out after they eat. And so then in science, they get a little bit more of that. As I said, in second grade, they're in there. We stand in it, we dig in it, we pull bunches of rotting food and already made soil out, and they look at it with hand lenses and they draw pictures, and so they're really understanding. And we smell it. We smell a lot of soil around here. We smell a lot of the worm castings too, and the kids are always blown away that it doesn't smell like poop. So we talk about the importance of that, and we'll mix it. I've already mixed it in with the soil the kids are going to plant today. So most of our worms died this winter, but we still have a lot of the castings. So we'll mix it in with the soil to do our starts for spring planting.
So what about the other sustainability?
The other campus. So as a school, we are an N through 12 school, and we recently started a sustainability committee, N through 12, made up of some upper school students, faculty and staff across all facets of our community. We've been working with some environmental consultants that have been kind of guiding us in ways to think about really understanding who we are as a school. We've drafted a mission statement to add to our board, or to bring to our board for them to ratify so that we can really publicly live and breathe this. We are looking at waste on both campuses. We have done food audits, food waste audits after lunches, and we'll do another one in the spring to see, for the kids to calculate how much food is being wasted at lunch. We've been looking at food in general. We here on this campus have our food program we call Let Us Feed You. Lettuce. And our chef, she is committed to serving all organic, local foods. And you can go in and ask her any day where the chicken came from, and she'll tell you. Our fifth graders this fall actually went to one of the farms that we get our food from. And that was a really great connection for them to see and meet the farmers and to see some of the food that they would be eating later in the winter. And We're also looking at how we treat our landscape and the plants that we have here. Our campus is already, both campuses don't use any inorganic pesticides, so everything that we do is good for the land and good for the neighbors, good for the children to play on the grass, good for the kids to play sports. And that was a really awesome thing that I learned when I first started here, that was already happening. So they're looking at, well, what kind of native species can we plant, or can we do an orchard? Would that be, can we make an arboretum with our trees, which I think exists on the other campus already. And the conversations have just been really rich. You know, sky high. What can we do next? It's exciting.
That's great. Speaking of that, the farm trip, it leads me to my next question, because I was part of that.
I know.
It was a fun one, and you're right. It was great to see and to hear from the farmer and his family on how they grow the food and how they tend to their crops and the different organic methods that they use to grow their food. It was outstanding. So, what other ways do you get parents involved in the children's curriculum?
Yeah, I've invited parents to come into the classroom if we're doing something that a kid has said, oh, my mom or dad or grandparent really does this, and I'll reach out. We have parents that are interested in helping out with our landscaping and our farming, which is super helpful. So we'll hold a couple of days in the spring, in the summer. I'm hoping to do a little bit more this summer with the canning that I'm going to be doing. All of the food that we're growing now is going to be saved and preserved for our Harvest Fest in the fall. So that's another opportunity I'm hoping to get more parents involved in.
That's great. Is there any last thoughts you have about the Friend Central program?
Yeah, part of our mission statement is that we hope to peacefully transform the world, that we want our students to go out there and to make the changes that they see need to be made. And, you know, for us, grown-ups, we have to rely on those children because of all the things that we have created and the people that came before us have created, all the problems with our environment. Like, these are the ones that are going to take the new technology and they're going to find solutions so that we can grow old gracefully. But, you know, in all seriousness, like, these are the kids that are going to do it. And so, you know, instilling them with this, not a kind of a Band-Aid moment, but like, how are you going to re-envision our world so that we can still live in it and breathe in it and drink the water and eat and also enjoy like the sky and the trees and being outside.
Well, thank you, Tiffany, and thank you for sharing so many great things about the program here at Friend Central School.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And if you'd like to have your elementary, middle, or high school featured in an upcoming episode of the Environmental Update, please email us at the email address below, and we'll get you included. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. I'm going to head back to the LMTV studios, and we're going to learn a little bit about a local college's sustainability program. Thank you. Welcome back to the Environmental Update. I'm Brian Hoppy, Chair of the Lower Merion EAC. I'm here with Jesse Lytle, Director of Sustainability at Haverford College, to discuss their sustainability program. Welcome, Jesse.
Thanks, Brian.
Can you tell us a little bit about Haverford College and your sustainability program?
Absolutely. Most Lower Merion residents know Haverford College. We're a really nice place to walk around, but we're also a college. We have about 1,300 students. They come from all over the country and the world. The college goes back to 1833. It was founded by Quakers, and so it actually has an ethos of stewardship of the earth that goes back to its very founding. There was an orchard on campus. It had a lot of agricultural components mixed in with the liberal arts curriculum. So sustainability and environmental work has been thematic for almost 200 years there.
So why are so many schools and colleges, including Haverford College, investing in sustainability measures and acting on climate change?
It's really interesting. The thing with climate change and most environmental impacts is they're really felt locally. So a college, like any municipality or city or town or residential community, feels what's happening in their environment right on campus. So we're no different than a place like Philadelphia or New York in that we have to take care of our land, our grounds, and our environment so that our students have a healthy place to live and so that we can keep operating. So when you think about who's doing the most interesting things in sustainability work, you see places that are facing things like sea level rise, maybe some dramatic challenges like that. But even here in the Philadelphia suburbs, we're facing some immediate issues. So that's one thing. The other thing that's interesting about a college is because we're a perpetual institution, we've been around for almost 200 years, we manage for the long term. So when we think ahead to how we want to allocate our resources or what we want to look like in a generation or two, we're thinking about the kinds of students we're going to have in 20, even 50 years, and what kind of world we're going to be living in. And so inevitably we're thinking about the environment because I think climate is going to have a major impact on how places operate in 10 years and 20 years. We don't have to face an electorate every 3 or 4 years, so the president of a college is really only answerable for long-term progress.
And you mentioned the city of Philadelphia or municipalities along coastlines are seeing some direct effects. Is Haverford seeing any direct effects of climate change?
Definitely. Right, nothing is dramatic. We usually think about the polar bears or we think about dramatic coastline storms. We don't see that. Our duck pond, the level is pretty steady. But we are seeing the same kinds of weather that the rest of the region sees. So, you might know this, but in 2017, the U.S. had over $300 billion in weather-related damage. And we get that on campus, just like any town gets that. Trees get knocked over, power lines come down, damages to buildings. And so we're dealing with that all the time. We had something like 4 nor'easters in March, which we didn't expect. That's extra plowing. It means we lose days from school. So it affects our operations day to day. Climate change also affects human health in lots of ways. So students who have allergies, and lots of students have allergies increasingly, those are getting worse. Allergy season is longer. There are more allergens in the air. Vector-borne diseases like Lyme disease are around. Pennsylvania now has ticks in every county. That didn't used to happen because the winters are warmer now and they survive. So we have to deal with that with our student population. We need to make sure they stay healthy so they can keep going to class. And of course, there are all these long-term indirect effects of climate change that we see. Students that come from countries that are maybe facing more severe challenges like droughts that produce economic hardship, that affects their ability to travel, to pay for college, all those things. And that's just sort of a slow, steady progression. We see a little bit of it now. We're probably going to see more and more as the years go by.
So what kind of steps is Haverford taking to address this?
Well, we think about meeting climate challenges in 2 main ways. One is what you would call resiliency planning, and that's really getting ready for the direct effects of climate change. So if we were on the coast, we'd be building a seawall, and some colleges are on the coast and are doing things like that. We don't have to do that, but we do have to think about things like our tree species on campus, because the trees that used to thrive in Pennsylvania probably won't thrive in 100 years. So that's just one small concrete example. When we plan our capital projects and buildings now, we're assuming that 100-year storms are probably going to happen every year, and a 1,000-year storm is probably going to happen in the lifetime of our building. So it really affects the immediate plans we make. We need to be sure that we have energy security, so we have backup generators on campus, because we can't count on the power grid surviving protracted storms and intense weather events. So that's one category. Is getting ready for the inevitable changes that we know are coming. More hopefully, we'd like to really mitigate some of the more severe effects of climate change, and that's something that we call climate action planning. And a lot of us are doing this at home, in our communities. It's thinking about what are the factors that are contributing to climate change, and can we mitigate those so that the worst possible future doesn't happen. So that means switching from fossil fuel and high greenhouse gas emitting technologies to renewable technologies. It means planting trees and thinking differently about travel and commuting and all sorts of things where we source our food. all of these things contribute to climate change. So if we can make a difference, we'll try to do that. And ideally, we can do things that do both, that make us more resilient so that we're prepared for bad weather and the future ahead of us. But that also will mitigate climate change. Things like energy efficiency. When you put weather stripping on your door at home, it means you're emitting fewer greenhouse gases when you heat your house. It saves you money. But it also means you're ready for when cold snaps come in the future. So we're doing that writ large on our campus.
So, but all that must cost more. I mean, does that take away from resources away from the primary mission of Haverford College?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it certainly costs more up front, but a lot of the things we do have immediate economic payback. Just like insulating your house, there are steps you can take that are good for the environment, but also good for your wallet, and that's true institutionally. So those are sort of easy decisions to make. That we can all do things where we invest short term and we see money coming back and positive environmental effects. Some of the things we can do are have a longer term payback, and that's just sort of a disciplined budgeting that's required. We could build a cheap building now and keep costs down, but we know we'd pay for it in 10 or 20 years because it wouldn't last or it wouldn't withstand the stormwater that's coming. So we'd rather make a smart investment now, so we're not passing the price on to future generations.
But doesn't that create an uneven playing field for some companies or nonprofits to have higher operating costs than they're required to?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have to come up with the capital now. We worry about it putting us at a competitive disadvantage, but actually we're finding that's not really founded, at least in higher education. When we look at the other institutions out there, it's really a shared commitment to these values, and we find that it's important to our students, that our students are looking for colleges that represent their values, that are thinking long term, who they can get behind. They can say, this is an organization I want to affiliate with. So they understand why we're spending money the way we spend it. At the same time, it is hard being a sole actor when maybe not everybody else is investing in the same things you are. It does makes your operations more expensive. And that's where we hope that public policy catches up over time. I think the government can play a really positive role in making smart policies, science-based policies that safeguard the environment for everyone and create new economic opportunities, promote renewable technologies, and really, have a rising tide that lifts all boats.
And along those lines, you said you're acting almost solo sometimes, and can Haverford, and let's face it, it's a small college, can they really make a difference?
Yeah, we wonder that all the time. I was joking with a colleague the other day about the salt we use when it snows. We can pay for the more expensive salt that's magnesium chloride because it's better for plants, and that's good for our campus. But if all of our neighbors put in, the cheap rock salt and the local roads do it, all that lousy salt is going into our groundwater anyway, and it's going to kill our plants anyway. So is it enough for us to do it? We do it anyway, and why? Why, we might wonder, but we really believe we're part of a larger movement, and our students understand that their generation is the first generation to see the effects of climate change writ large in their world, and they understand they're the last generation that can make a difference, and so we see ourselves as part of a social movement. We're doing our part, but we see others stepping up to do their parts, and incrementally we will get there.
So what steps can make the biggest difference, either for families or residents or colleges, other colleges, businesses within our community?
Sure. The things that we can do that have an economic payback are obviously appealing when we can do well and do good at the same time. So energy efficiency is an easy one. When we think about how we heat our homes, in Pennsylvania, it's actually really easy if you're at home and you want to use green energy, you just go to papowerswitch.com, sign up for a renewable energy provider, and just with a few clicks of the mouse, you've improved your own carbon footprint, and the cost is pretty much the same now because technology's improved so much. It used to be that was the biggest part of a person's carbon footprint, but now nationally, transportation is actually the single biggest sector when we think about emissions. And there are lots of great new technologies. Electric cars and hybrids are terrific. Maybe not everybody can afford to go out there and plop down a few grand for a new vehicle. But small changes, carpooling, walk when you can, ride your bike. I ride my bike from Narberth to work every day, and I've saved 3 tons of greenhouse gas emissions, and I get good exercise, and I'm not sitting in lousy traffic on Lancaster Ave. So that's a small thing, but if everybody does that, it adds up and it makes a big difference.
It does. It does. Well, thank you, Jesse, for joining me today and sharing such great information about Haverford College and your sustainability program and sustainability in general. Here in the township, we're going to be, and as part of the EAC, we're going to be looking at conducting a sustainability workshop, building a consensus amongst residents and with our leadership here within the township, and really figuring out what direction we want to go to. But it'd be great to use Haverford and other municipalities as a model. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Well, that does it for the spring edition of the Environmental Update. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed today's program. If you have any suggested topics for future episodes or have a question on environmental issues, please email us at the address below. Thank you, and see you again in the summer.